Hi.
Hi. Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, guys, this is my friend Dave Grohl. This is Film2Future, all of our students over Zoom.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
What's up?
What's up? Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we're so happy to have you. And we just want to hear all of the magic that comes from you. We want to, everything, yes. I know. I shared that we've talked about origin stories. So if you want to share your origin story, I mean, Dave Grohl, as you well know, is a prolific musician, Nirvana, Foo Fighters, director of the Sound City, Amazing Sound City, and Sonic Highways on HBO, amongst a gazillion other things. And of course, so much philanthropy and just basic awesomeness. So, I mean, Dave Grohl is the one person that doesn't really need an introduction, but there you go. But perhaps you could share, because we just thought maybe you could share a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your experience in directing. The kids have a ton of questions for you, but I know you don't really need a lot of prompts because you're a great storyteller. So why don't I just...
I talk a lot, you guys. When I start talking, it's hard to shut me up, just so you know.
Great storyteller. Yeah. Well, I'll just give you the floor because yes.
Well, okay. So I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. And my mom was a public school teacher, and I was so bad at school. I was the worst student ever. I think it was because my mom was a teacher. I totally rebelled against her. But I came from this really awesome family of writers. So my father, he was a journalist. He worked for newspapers, and then he became a speechwriter in Washington, D.C. So he was kind of like a PR guy. And my mother, she was an English teacher, so she taught high school English, but she was also a forensics coach where she taught public speaking, and she was a great writer too. She taught creative writing and whatever. So both of my parents were really great writers, but they were also both really great storytellers. My father, probably mostly my father, he would sit and tell me stories that went on forever. He talked so slowly, it drove me insane, and I couldn't wait to get out of there whenever he started the story. But he was really good at, he was great at telling stories. So they were also both musicians, and I kind of got the music gene from the two of them, and never really took lessons to play music. I just kind of figured it out. But when I was young, I would listen to like Beatles records and play along to them with this like chord book that I had, this little Beatles songbook. I would play along to the records. And what I started to understand was like a basic sense of arrangement and composition within music, where, you know, most songs, there's like an intro, and then there's a verse, and then there's a chorus, and then there's another verse, and then there's another chorus, then there's a bridge, and then there's like a big finale chorus. So listening to music, I started thinking about the structure of songs. And then I started writing songs myself and playing with bands and playing with other people and stuff like that. But it wasn't long before, you know, we started making like funny videos. Just, these are like punk rock bands I was in, like in the 80s with my friends. And we would make these really sort of silly videos where we were then matching the visual with the music, and also trying to, you know, make the two of them fit, whether there was a music video that had like any sort of storyline, or if it was just images, there was, you know, there was something to putting these two different elements together and making them work. Then over time, like through Nirvana, you know, at first we weren't really that involved with the videos that we made. And then we got a little bit more involved with the videos. And then once the Foo Fighters started, to me, I always looked at music videos like they were these silly little commercials, because that's basically all they are. I mean, of course, like some of them are these incredible works of art, but for the most part, you're just putting a visual to your music so that people will watch it and then eventually just go like buy your record or something like that. So we started making fun of it, and we started making these really funny videos because we didn't really want to take it too seriously. Then I started directing and getting more into that process, and I just loved the collaboration of a team. When you know, when directing a video, I loved having some sort of collective or connected vision with my DP. The producers were always really important. To me, the most important thing was always that it was fun. That that in making it, everybody was like a team. So as a director, I was usually just like a cheerleader because I don't know anything about directing, but I do know how to like get a bunch of people together and get everyone on the same wavelength and like make it fun. So yeah, so over the years, you know, just making videos for the band or whatever, eventually that led to directing documentary stuff. And I kind of fell into it, but to me, the most important, there are a few really important elements. One being that you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve. So when you go into it, it's almost like if you can see the whole thing in your head before you go in to do it, then you're like halfway there, because at least you know what you want to achieve. Then the trick is to somehow be able to communicate that, or be able to get everyone on the same page so that they can all understand the vision. Because you imagine that everybody understands what's in your head. They don't. Like, you imagine that everyone can see the movie that's playing out in your head. They can't. So you have to kind of make sure that you get everybody sort of on the same wavelength, and never expect for anyone to really totally understand what you're doing. Then the idea is to assemble a great team of like-minded people, and then to like cheerlead them into following you to achieve your vision. So I was lucky to do that with friends in Sound City, the Sound City documentary, or the Sonic Highways thing. It's like it's almost like we were just friends who were making a movie, or friends who were making a documentary series. It never felt, I mean, it was work and it was hard work, but it never felt like a job that you didn't want to do, because you're surrounded by the people that you actually love hanging out with. So yeah, so it was really, I mean, being able to do this kind of thing. I'm just finishing another documentary now that we made in the same way, basically with the same people. A great team of brilliant filmmakers and producers, and you know, we get together and we have fun, and I think that that kind of comes out in the movie, just as important as, you know, the arc of the story, or the 3 parts, or whatever it is as important as you know, the vision is. I think that being able to do it with people that you actually love hanging out with, it makes such a huge difference. And then once you assemble that team, stick with them like as long as you can. I've had the same manager for 30 years. I've had the same accountant for 30 years. I've had the same production team now for, I don't even know how long, over a decade. And it's basically because we're friends. And friends that work with each other, I think, get a lot more done than people that are just there to like hit record or whatever, you know. I think that when you're actually emotionally invested with each other, it makes things easier. Okay, so I don't even know what I'm talking about.
I know, I was going to say, but that's exactly what Rachel just put up there. Hey, Rachel, that is a big thing that we teach the kids, is that your team, that these are people you're going to know in the industry for your whole existence, you know, so have good relationships, learn how to work as a team. Did I just freeze? Oh no, I think, oh, okay, sorry. But when you approach, so having such an intense relationship with both genres, you know, with being in film and being in music, how would you approach as a director? Like, how do you approach film differently because you are a musician? If that makes sense. I think it froze. Oh, there you go. Did you? Oh, sorry.
You're kind of, yeah, a little bit. You kind of cut out. How would I approach directing? Is that what you said?
You approach directing differently because you were a musician, do you think? Is there a different approach that you might take as a filmmaker with this really beautiful, broad history of music behind you?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, I think there's a lot of similarities with writing music and writing a story. You know, I think that the arrangements and the composition of something is, there are a lot of parallels. So,
Okay.
you know, ultimately, you want to be able to bring the listener or the viewer in with some sort of hook, you know, and then to have like these plateaus. There has to be dynamic within each thing. So you have to be able to bring people all the way up here, and then bring them down here, but sort of to do it in this sort of like wave, so that when you finally get to the end, the finale is really the hook, you know. Yeah, I mean, I think it's you know, it's just basic communication in a way. Like, you have an idea and you want to be able to communicate it. So you have to be able to do it in a way that A, people will understand, B, people will, you know, people will be engaged. I mean, you have to keep the viewer or the listener engaged, while, you know, sort of molding some sort of aesthetic, like whether it's a sound or a visual. It's I don't know. It's almost like telling a joke, you know.
Right.
It's like you set up the punchline, and then by the time you get to it, it works. And so, and maybe that's giving the punchline away first, and then getting to it, you know, as a finale of working up to it or something. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's funny. I remember when I did the Sound City movie. Basically, if you haven't seen it, the movie is about this old studio in the San Fernando Valley that closed down because nobody's using those old studios anymore. I recorded there when I was young. It was my favorite place on earth. They had this mixing console that was one of a kind. I bought it from them, and so I decided to make a movie about the history of the studio. And I called my mom. So this is my mom, who's a creative writing teacher. I called her and I said, "Oh my God, I'm going to make a movie." And she said, "About what?" And I said, "Well, Sound City closed. I bought the board. So I'm going to tell the history of the studio. And then I'm going to make a new record on that old board with all of those people that recorded there for the last 40 years. And the first thing she said, "Well, you know, you don't start the movie by saying you have the board." And I was like, "I don't?" She goes, "No." She said, "You tell the story, the studio closes, you rescue the board, and then you bring everyone back." And like, that was, she, in 1 minute, she gave me the structure of the entire film. And she was right. And so then I got together with a couple writers who were really awesome, and we basically kind of blocked it out into a 3-part story, so that it did have that dynamic, and it did go up and down, and it did keep the viewer engaged. So that then the finale not only had, you know, some sort of historical linear shape, but it also was emotional. And that was the trick to that movie, was to humanize or get emotion or personality from a mixing console, which is basically, you know, it's just like a piece of electronics. Like, who cares, right? But by the end of the movie, you realize, like, you're in love with a piece of electronics, you know, like, so that was, the challenge was to somehow get emotion out of an inanimate object, which we did. So you also have to be able to connect to the viewer in a way that, you know, that resonates with them. Like, who cares about a studio? Who cares, right? Who cares about you know, their couch that they rented or the nasty carpet on the walls. Like, who gives a crap? Like, that's nothing. But by the end of the movie, you're in love with all of the characters, and you wish that that place was still a studio, because you connect somehow emotionally with the viewer.
Oh yeah, so true. Well, okay, so kids have questions for you, I'm sure, but I wanted to ask you as well, if you had one tip for them as a director, and you've kind of peppered what you've said so far with some really interesting tips, I think. But if you had one or two big tips, you know, if you're like, if I'm to impart something to you, what would that be?
Be nice. Just be nice.
Yes.
I'm telling you, man, like, you know, the most important part, if you're the director and you're the person that's leading everyone, be cool, because you want them to follow your vision. And if you're being a dick or whatever, if you're being a jerk, then they're just going to be like, you know, they're not going to want. So if you assemble a team and you're in charge, I mean, depending on the size of the project, I mean, sometimes there's 5 people, sometimes there's 50 people, whatever it is, you have to be cool to everyone, because at the end of the day, they're not working for their own weird vision. They're working to help you find yours. So if you're cool to everybody you work with and really establish like a one-on-one relationship, like, okay, man, we're in this together. Like, trust me, this is going to be good. Just, you know, let's do this. And just be cool, you know, like, no, like screaming and shouting at people. It's weird. Because, I mean, I've been on a few movie sets and I've been on a few projects and stuff like that. And everyone's always been cool, but you always hear like these crazy horrors, like people having tantrums and throwing stuff and blah, blah, blah. Like, if someone asked me to be on a movie where a director was like screaming at everyone and throwing stuff all over the place, I'd be out in 2 seconds. I'd just be like, no, I don't want to do that. So just be cool.
Be cool. But you are also known for being such a nice person. Like, throughout the world, you are also known for that, and whatever you step into. So
it's all an act. I'm just trying to make your lives easier right now.
Well, I wanted to let Victor have the first shot at a question, because he is a huge fan.
What's up, Victor?
As are many. But Victor, do you have a question for Dave?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm just like trying to articulate myself because I'm very like.
Me too.
Emotional. I've been listening to you since my 6th grade, and I heard the Foo Fighters before Nirvana. So it's it was funny because I listened to you on the radio, and my older brother was like, "Oh, I have like 3 of their albums," and I was like, "Really?" And like he shows it to me, and I dive down like a Foo Fighters like spiral, and then he's like, "Have you heard of Nirvana?" And I'm like, "No, who's that?" And like I also go through that. And like as a 6th grader, it sounds like you wouldn't know these people. But now like I know these people, and I know like it just got me down rock, and I learned guitar. And one of the first songs was Everlong. Like everybody pretty much knows it at this point. And then I learned bass, and now I want to learn the drums, but I also want to learn how to sing. And I want to be a multi-instrumentalist like you, because you were one of like my inspirations for it. And my question is, since you started out on Nirvana as a drummer and only as that, you didn't really have anything to do in the writing or the singing department. Mm-hmm. And then in the Foo Fighters, you came out as like an amazing guitarist and also the lead singer. Where did you learn how to sing? And how different is the experience of just being a drummer versus being the creative head of a really huge band?
You know, it's funny because I started playing guitar first when I was maybe like 9 or 10 years old. And, you know, listening to those Beatles songs and stuff like that. And I never learned to sing. I still don't know how to sing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just screaming my butt off the whole time. So I don't really know. But I used to like play, I didn't have a drum set, but I would listen to records and I'd set up a drum set with pillows in my bedroom. It was really weird. But I would just play along just to my favorite punk rock records and stuff. And then I was in a band where the drummer just wasn't that good. And so I was like, dude, why don't I play the drums and you play the bass or whatever? So I kind of switched over. But, you know, being a drummer is a really interesting job, because it's not your job to be in the front of the band. It's your job to basically kind of be unnoticed. You want everyone like jumping around and dancing and stuff to your music, but you don't really need to be out front. Your job is just basically, you're kind of like the engine that makes the whole thing move. Like when I was a kid, I played soccer and I played lacrosse and stuff like that. And I was always a goalie. I loved being a goalie, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like every band is only as good as its drummer. Just like every team is only as good as its goalie. So early on, like in my life, I kind of just sort of liked being the person in the back, but knowing like, okay, well, you know, I don't, you know, I like just being the person that like makes sure everything's cool, right? And then after Nirvana, I mean, I'd been playing guitar and recording songs by myself the whole time I was in Nirvana, but Kurt was like the greatest songwriter ever. So I wasn't gonna just say like, I mean, that's a famous old joke. Like, what's the last thing the drummer said before he got kicked out of the band? Hey guys, I got a song we should play. You know, like you don't really, I didn't want to confuse the process. And plus, like, there's no way I could write songs as good as Kurt. So I was like, well, you know, great. We've got a great songwriter. I'll just play the drums. And then after Nirvana was over, I wasn't finished making music, but I didn't really want to be a drummer for anybody, really. So I just took all these songs that I had written for years and I recorded them. But the difference, it is a big difference. But it's good because I think like, if you guys like doing what you guys do, if you start down sort of at the bottom rung of the ladder and work your way up to being a director or being in charge, then you'll understand the responsibilities of every single thing all the way up to the top, and you'll appreciate them more. So when, you know, when the guy at catering hands you a coffee that's cold, you're not going to yell at him for handing you a cold cup of coffee. You're just going to stick it in the microwave because that's what you did when you were the caterer, and you're just going to be cool about it. And then you kind of like keep going up the line as much as you appreciate all the different positions all the way up. I mean, like, you know, I've been the drummer. I've loaded my own gear. I've tuned my own drums. I've slept on floors. I've, you know, starved in a van for 2 months on tour. And then if you do that as a musician, then by the time you get to like the private planes where you have KFC and champagne and shit like that, like you really, it's the best KFC you've ever had in your entire life. This is like, wow, this is amazing, because you know what it's like to go all the way up. I think it's the same probably with being a director or filmmaker. I mean, that's funny for me to say because I just went straight to being a director, not really knowing what I was doing. But I do appreciate, you know, the hard work that everyone puts into something when you're working with a team. But it's funny, you know, being a lead singer. Now I'm like, come on, everybody, let's go. And I'm up at the front of the stage and stuff, and it's pretty awesome. Although I love being a drummer still. I miss it. I play drums for friends, but yeah, they're two different jobs for sure.
That's so cool. Well, Owen has a question too. Go ahead, Owen.
Hey, how you doing, David?
Hi, Owen. Thank you for calling me David. Only my mother calls me David.
It's funny because I actually discovered you from my boss. He would always play Foo Fighters at the restaurant where I worked at. So he's like, dude, you should check these guys out. I'm like, oh yeah, totally. So that's how I discovered you. So my question is, how did you transition from a musician and sort of a visionary for Foo Fighters into a director? How was that change?
Well, I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, I was weird. was I was weird when I was young. Like, I lived in this little suburb of Washington, D.C., very sort of in Virginia, pretty like conservative place, but I was really into art and I was really into music, and I was the weirdo in my neighborhood. I was the punk kid that had a weird haircut and, you know, and listened to crazy music. And I got into photography. I kind of got really into visuals when I was 15 or 16 or something like that, and got really into 35 millimeter photography. And what I wanted to do is my dream was to go to Parsons and go study commercial design or commercial art and Parsons in New York. But I was too dumb. I was too poor. I didn't even finish high school. So there was no way I was going to really pull that off. But I was interested from an early age in art and visual. But the directing thing, it started with music videos, and music videos are funny and fun because they're almost like making silent films, right? It's almost like, they're almost like Charlie Chaplin movies because people are acting, but it has to be sort of like physical in a way, or, you know, there's no dialogue, it's just music. Yeah. And so directing music videos is always kind of funny because the videos that we made were meant to be sort of tongue-in-cheek and funny. So it was like all bets were off. Like if you wanted to do the most ridiculous Three Stooges physical humor, then go for it, because that's gonna work on screen. So, and I was always directing my friends, you know. I was like telling my drummer, like, okay, put on a dress and then we're gonna make out. So, but then with the documentary stuff, you know, if it's something that you're personally invested in, and you're interviewing people for your documentary, I mean, we haven't even talked about editing yet, because I think editing is a huge piece of the puzzle. But in making a documentary or directing, I'm basically just kind of like walking a path, talking to people that are then sort of turning me in another direction, and I keep walking, I get to the next person. And when I interview people, I don't hold questions in my hand, because I want it to be like a conversation. So that you know, there's sort of a natural feeling where people, I don't know, they don't feel like they're being interrogated. So, you know, so I think that in directing, I just fell into it like I would have, I don't know, I just had an idea and I could just picture it in my head, and assembling that great team of people that actually knew what they were doing, and then just kind of like following the vision like a divining rod until you get everything that you need, and then putting it together and editing it together in a way that makes sense. I just kind of lucked out. I don't know. I love doing it. And when I say I don't know what I'm doing, I kind of, it's almost the same as drums. Like I didn't take lessons to play the drums, but I just had this natural inclination to do it. Kind of the same with guitar, or like cooking. Like I cook a bunch. I don't know how to cook, but I can cook for 700 people at a time. You know? And it's good.
It's true. We did it at the food bank too. He's an excellent barbecuer.
I can cook.
Well, you'd mentioned editing, and I thought maybe we could just kind of wrap it up with your thoughts on how we complete that project and why that post-editorial process is so important.
Well, okay, so especially with storytelling, I think, you know, timing has a lot to do with everything. And I say that as a drummer, obviously, but like being able to keep a viewer engaged so that you can get to that next peak, emotional peak or visual peak or whatever it is is really important. And so, finding a way, I think editing is fun, because you're basically, you're finally realizing the vision that you have in your head, and you're telling the story in a way that maybe someone else will understand it too. I just had a thought.
That was a great way to put it, though, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's for me personally, it's really one of the biggest parts of the entire process, because you can make the jokes work, or you can make something funny that's not necessarily funny, or you can make something emotional that's not necessarily emotional. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So one of the things I work with this great writer named Mark Monroe, and he's like an Academy Award winning writer. He's an amazing dude. Of course, we just sit around and talk about rock and roll and basketball and drink beer and stuff like that. So it's not like we have this crazy professional relationship, but we do. And one of the things that in making these documentaries, Sonic Highways, for example, I interviewed 100 people, everyone from President Obama to Dolly Parton to, I interviewed a lot of people. And so we walked into each episode kind of knowing what we wanted to get, but I would sit down and interview these people and ask them questions that I didn't know the answer to. So rather than going into it thinking like, okay, I just need this person to say this, which of course you do. I mean, it's one of the reasons why you interview somebody, is because they have to fill out a certain part of the story. But when you ask someone a question that you don't know the answer to, you're putting yourself in the position of the viewer. So you should be studied, and you should know what you're going in to get. But going into to interview someone, it's those little surprises that put you in the viewer's, like, now you're seeing it from the viewer's perspective. You're learning something. And then, so after all of these interviews, what we would do is the writer would basically take the transcripts, and before really you even edit any image, you're basically cutting the story into a place. So now you have the story on paper first. So now you know, here's the quote, here's the quote, here's the quote. This is how the story is laid out from beginning to end. So now you have it on paper. Once you have it on paper, then you go to fill it in with the visual, because the most important thing is the story. So you have to do that first. Don't get caught up on like some really trippy, cool thing you did with the lens and the light at night when it was snowing or whatever. Like, get the story first, and then you'll be able to sort of like, bring out the emotion with the visuals. So yeah, that's all I learned, really.
Well, that's amazing. We are so, so grateful that you joined us. As I said, we're in the middle of post, eh? So the kids they've been working 7 days a week. They're so tired. So they needed this boost from you to get them enthused and back in the game. And we will happily share the shorts with you if you're interested, the 5 shorts when they're completed.
Absolutely. I'd love to see it.
That would be amazing, because they're amazingly talented, these kids. And we're so grateful to have you. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And we hope to see you again. We'll show you the shorts. Can we give Dave a round? Woo! Yeah.
Bye, guys. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Bye.
This is the hard part.